Johanna Brandt was not a general or politician. She was a mother, a healer, and a visionary. And yet, her visions painted a future far larger than herself. Her earlier prophecies spoke of South Africa's struggles, war, and betrayal. But by the end of her visions, Johanna was no longer looking only at a nation. She was gazing into the fate of the world itself. Plagues, famine, darkness, and beyond it all, a remnant purified by fire. In this final chapter, we walk with Johanna into the heart of her most terrifying and most hopeful revelations. Johanna foresaw a plague of death that moved faster than any army. She described cities silent, the streets littered with the sick and dying, hospitals overwhelmed, governments powerless. It was not just an epidemic, it was a wave that reshaped nations. Was she glimpsing something like the Spanish flu of her own era? Or was she seeing a plague yet to come, perhaps even worse than COVID-19? To Johanna, this plague was more than a disease. It was a judgment, a spiritual cleansing that revealed the fragility of modern civilization. One of Johanna's most chilling visions was of darkness covering nations. Not a storm, not an eclipse, but a supernatural darkness that lasted days. People cowered in fear, unable to see, unable to move. This echoes the plague of darkness in Egypt and also Revelation's trumpet and bowl judgments, where the sun is darkened and the kingdom of the beast is plunged into shadow. Johanna warned that this darkness would not only be physical, it would be moral and spiritual, a time when truth would vanish and evil would seem to reign unchecked. Johanna also spoke of swarms of locusts devouring crops, leaving famine in their wake. This was not an ordinary agricultural disaster. In her visions, the locusts were tied to spiritual forces, an echo of Joel's prophecy in Revelation 9, where locusts rise from the abyss. To Johanna, these locusts symbolized both physical hunger and spiritual attack. Nations would starve, not only for food but for righteousness, as corruption and deception consumed them. Perhaps Johanna's most terrifying vision was what she called the Great Purge. She saw fire sweeping through nations, leaders toppled, and the proud brought low. Cities were abandoned, their monuments reduced to rubble. But this was not the end. She described it as a cleansing fire. Not annihilation, but purification. It was a time when the false would be burned away, leaving only what was true. The survivors of this purge would be few, but they would form the seed of what came next. Like Sienner, Johanna spoke of a remnant, survivors not chosen by wealth or power, but by faith. These were the ordinary people, hidden away during the storm. Families clinging to prayer, individuals refusing to bow to fear, communities bound together not by politics but by faith and resilience. This remnant would emerge from the ruins of plague, famine, and fire. They would rebuild not on corruption but on purity. To Johanna, they were the living proof that judgment was not the end. It was the beginning of something new. Johanna foresaw a storm greater than any before. Nations would rise and fall, kings would be overthrown. The powers of the world would shake like leaves in the wind. This was not just South Africa's storm, it was a global tempest. She saw continents trembling, oceans roaring, and humanity standing on the brink of annihilation. Yet, in the eye of the storm, Johanna saw a light, a dawn beyond the night. How do Johanna's visions fit into the biblical timeline? The plague echoes Revelation's pale horse, death, followed by Hades. The darkness recalls both Egypt's plague and Revelation's fifth bowl judgment. The locusts mirror Joel's prophecy and Revelation's demonic swarm. The Great Purge parallels the tribulation fire, a time of judgment and refining. The remnant reflects the sealed faithful who endure until the end. Johanna's visions align closely with Scripture, as though she was shown fragments of the same divine story. Why would Johanna be shown such terror? Perhaps it was to remind us of this truth, that no matter how dark the night, there is always a dawn. Her visions were not meant to paralyze with fear. They were meant to prepare, to awaken, to call a people to faith. She wanted us to see that beyond plague and famine, beyond storms and purges, there is always a remnant, always survivors, always hope. Johanna lived through wars, through personal loss, through times when hope seemed impossible. Her prophecies, like Sienner's, can be debated, doubted, or dismissed. But one thing is undeniable. Her visions echo ancient truths that ring with startling relevance today. Plagues, darkness, famine, fire, a remnant rising. Perhaps she was not simply imagining, perhaps she was given a glimpse into the final chapters of history. And if that is true, then the question is not whether her visions will happen. The question is, are we ready when they do? This is the close of Johanna Brandt's visions, a story of plague and darkness, a story of famine and fire, a story of judgment and survival. But above all, it is a story of hope, that even in the darkest hour, God preserves a remnant. And through that remnant, the world will see the dawn. And so, with Johanna's final prophecy, we turn to the larger stage, the timeline of the end times. Gog and Magog, the rise of Antichrist, the mid-tribulation rapture. This is not the end, it is the beginning. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.